Greetings, Wallet, and welcome to another Rosario Rants, where I speak aloud my thoughts on Warhammer and wargaming in general. As some of you may know, I just recently completed painting Rosario. Check out those VODs, by the way. And while reminiscing of that time spent with you, Varlets, I was reminded of something one of you asked me. How can you like the White Scars when they have so few characters? And it's true, the White Scars only have three named miniatures. The aforementioned Rosario, the Jagged Icon, their Primarch, and the new Super Icon who's coming out later this year, and he's not quite out yet. At least not out to this recording. I remember being a little perplexed by the question. What do characters have to do with what faction I like? Which then led me to think, wait, why wasn't I taking into account named characters as part of the selection process for my favorite factions? As I said in my rant regarding best armies, I like characters and the drama that unfolds when two people meet on the battlefield. And now thinking about it, most of the factions I like in WH40K don't really have a lot of named miniatures in them. I like the White Scars, as I mentioned. I also like the Mechanicus. I like the Sisters of Battle, the Inquisition, the Imperial Guard, the Iron Warriors, the Orcs, the Drukhari, and recently, I've become more and more fascinated by the Eldari Corsairs. Been doing quite the lore dive on. If you're interested, I'd recommend watching the videos by Scholars Lore and Craftwell Eldar on the subject. But again, back to the question. Why was it that names or faces never came to mind when I thought of my favorite factions? Except maybe the White Scars themselves with Jagged Icon, which all Space Marine legions have a face of them because of their Primarchs, and the Guard with
Kai, hero of the Imperium! Kai, hero of the Imperium!
But that might just be because his books were the first 40k books I ever read. So let's dive in and see why this might be. How can I like factions with little or no named characters? Well, if we go back to the very beginning, my first exposure to WH40K was a miniatures catalog. I didn't know anything about the lore or the characters in the setting, and there was very little in that catalog telling me about it. But I was immediately drawn in by all the cool-looking models, especially the Space Wolves. All I saw was guys in power armor with a cool wolf motif, and wolves are cool. And a few years after that, I played the video game Space Hulk, Vengeance of the Blood Angels. In it, I saw, again, guys in power armor, but this time fighting against hordes of monstrous aliens who can rip you apart with just their claws. Didn't know anything about the story of the game. All I knew was that I had to survive against these gene stealers at all costs. Again, drawn in by the cool visuals. So at this point, I'm falling in love with the setting through its aesthetic and vibe. I am loading all the elements of science fiction, meets action and survival horror with a splash of gothic architecture and the power armor. Cannot forget the power armor. I'm being shown cool elements from this setting and it's making me want to know more. What are Space Marines? Why do they all act like medieval knights? What's with these horrifying aliens called gene stealers? Why does everything look like a Catholic church? And my curiosity is being drawn in by these interesting visuals. With nothing but aesthetics, brief lore blurbs, and a cursory knowledge of the setting, my imagination was running wild with all the possibilities. And getting me to do research, obviously. Probably why I can't just focus on the painting of one army, and I've settled on kill teams at most. There's just way too much at 40k that I absolutely love. You see, whenever I see a cool miniature or faction, I immediately want to know more about them. I see the wacky robot priest aesthetic of the Mechanicus, and I'm immediately drawn in. Cool and unique visuals are what drew me to the setting in the first place, not characters and their stories. So it really just boils down to the fact that I like the factions I like because I think they look cool. I'm not beholden to an officially named character to weigh my decision on which faction I like. I don't need my favorite faction to have a named character because my little guys, yes, my miniatures, the ones I paint and play with, are my characters. And honestly, I prefer to keep it that way. I don't really like the idea of having officially named miniatures in my war bands or kill teams. I think George from C Studios put it best when he said
that you don't want to put like Dante into your army because how likely is it that my Blood Angels would have Dante? And I'm like, what is...
There's like 1,000 of them. I've got like 12. And what, it just so happens that Dante was there that afternoon? The goal to have a 30k like Age of Darkness army and you've got like 200 models on your table and you've got a Primarch. Who do you think you are?
Okay.
The arrogance
Yeah,
to think that arrogance to think that like the lion is just like palling along in your little squad. What are you talking about? There's like 100,000 of them.
So why would my little guys, who have no books or stories written about them, at least not yet, suddenly be teaming up with an officially named character? Somebody like George mentioned the lion. It makes no sense. The universe is so massive, and my little guys are just a droplet in the vast ocean that is the 41st millennium. So why was I asked this question? Why did that varlet feel necessary to ask me that? Well, I think it has to do with what drew him into WH40K. He was probably drawn in by all the interesting characters in the setting and wants to paint and play as them. And that's okay. Thanks to all the WH40K content creators out there, a lot of people are being exposed to the setting through its named characters. And also, you can't forget that those books are very popular, especially nowadays. Probably why we see an ever-increasing demand to expand the setting story. And if you'd like to know my thoughts on that subject, check out my rant titled, Should the WH40K Story Progress? But really, there really is no right or wrong way to engage with the setting. I just figured it'd be fun to dive deeper into this question and what the question itself implied. Anyway, what do you varlets think? What drew you into WH40K? Was it the visuals or the characters? Did you have a favorite faction? And how many name miniatures does that faction have? I have been Interrogator Rosario US, attaché to Milady Inquisitor Marcon of the Order Hereticus, and I'm signing out from the grim dark future. Bye-bye, varlets, and remember that by a cuteness of mine shall we find victory. Hey, if you like what you heard, then please feel free to say so in the comments, or hit me up on Instagram at Rosario US Art. And don't forget that I stream every week on Twitch, which is also at Rosario US Art. Come join the fun.